Evolution of a Nobody, Book 2. Chapters 26 and 27, When the Light Turns Cold. Raziel carried the sleeping young man over to his bed and put him down again as if he'd never awakened from her previous visit. As he lay there dreaming, the angel and the demon stood over him and watched his chest rise and fall. "It's so hard to believe, isn't it?" Liala asked and put her hand over his chest. The warmth of his skin spread to her even through his clothing, and he didn't respond, save for a smile to spread out over his face as if he knew she was there. "What is?" her sister asked without glancing away from the sleeping youthful face. He had the faint beginnings of a beard going, though he obviously made efforts at shaving. It was a shoddy hack job that missed far more than it got. He seemed so normal. Put him into orc skin or elf skin, angel or demon skin, and drop him as he is in our world. He'd fit perfectly. No, not perfectly, but just like anyone else. But here he is, living a lie and not even knowing it. He really believes she's still alive, but her body has been lying in there all this time. Liala answered and curled the fingers of her hand halfway into her palm, then spread them back out again. Yeah, Raziel said and swallowed. I saw the world through his eyes, and if I didn't know what I did already, I wouldn't have believed it. Maybe I should have kept looking, but I was afraid of reaching that point and making him see it. No, I know, Liala answered, the cream-white feathers of her wings ruffled unhappily. But is a seal really the right option? We don't know much about humans in this world still. It was shocking enough that he could recall what we did with his body. Maybe it won't work. Maybe we'll seal away more than we mean to, maybe... Liala, stop! Raziel demanded and put a hand over the one which still lay on Albert's chest. I'm nervous enough as it is. When I was in his head, I actually got to see the moment his, consciousness as an individual manifested. The first thing he said was, "That was hard." I don't know what or how, but I definitely shouldn't have encountered him like that. I know how different his kind is from anything we have experience with. I'll just have to do my best. We don't have to seal much, just part of today. You can take Lisa home and seal her memory too, and then it should be fine. After that, we can just get through this conference, keep him distracted for a few days, and then it'll be fine. There'll be no reason to worry about a few missing hours. Raziel took a deep breath and tightened her hold on her sister's hand. Besides what? Liala pressed, her own breath caught in the moment. It's the only option we have at all, unless you've got some idea I haven't heard yet. Raziel waited expectantly, her red eyes honing in on the blue of her sister's own. No. No, I don't. Do it then. Just make sure you fit into his dream. Liala swallowed hard and stepped out of the way as her sister climbed onto the bed so that she was straddling the sleeping young man. Raziel pressed her forehead to that of Albert and cast her spell. As her awareness of the outer world faded, the demoness couldn't help but wonder, what's a human boy going to be? She never completed the thought because she got her answer. Oh, she muttered when she appeared in his spell-induced lustful sleep. Albert didn't see her. He couldn't have. He was reclining on a broad couch with a high arch, and his eyes were closed while he moaned in ecstasy. The room, such as it was filled with columns of white marble and a small square pool with 2 steps just beneath the water. There, dream versions of herself and her sister were washing each other as the steam slowly rose and began to turn them into shadowy outlines. Just beyond the pool, the outfits they'd bought in ignorance of human dress habits lay folded neatly, waiting to be worn. So it really was fetish wear. Raziel sighed. If my sister saw us doing... She looked away from the entwining figures whose bathing became less and less about cleanliness as the seconds ticked past. That, she'd die of embarrassment. Raziel, however, took it in stride. For the succubus, this was nothing less than what was expected of a spell like hers. On the couch, Albert's eyes were still closed as 3 women went to work with deft hands and deft tongues over the entirety of his body, while he reclined like an emperor of the demoness's birthplace. At least the spell worked, she thought privately. So, now what? If he were an orc or an elf or something, there'd be something representational of stored memories around. And he had the memory path before, and then before that, no, this is different. Maybe it was the fact that both his sleep and his physical desires were induced by magic, or maybe it was the fact that he was human and not of a familiar race. The answer eluded her, but dreams always held some kind of a key when it came to magic. The problem, however, was finding it. The steam rising from the pool now concealed the dream versions of her sister and herself, and at that Raziel felt at least a little bit of relief. I may not be as innocent or prudish as my sister, but still, even that is a little bit much. The walls were of white marble, much like the columns, and on a nearby table sat various foods. Oysters, dates, chocolates, and cut strawberries lay on silver-tiered plates. At their side, cups of rich-smelling red wine sat on a tray amidst perfectly cut grapes which writhed around the silver tray. "God, yes, like that," Albert said, and sucked in his breath and arched his back. Raziel briefly looked down at herself. The clothing she wore could only be described as a kind of white sheet which wrapped over her body and was bound at the corner over her shoulder. She picked at it a moment. "So I'm really immersed, at least. Maybe because he has no defenses, the spells are that much more effective." She turned that over in her head and felt a sudden pang of profound guilt. He's enjoying himself, and it's just a dream, but still, this feels wrong. Like I'm violating him. Raziel passed the orgy of moaning and writhing figures to explore the room where more furniture lay. The laws of her homeland were very clear on the use of magic on unwilling recipients, and those like her who were potentials with high limits on magic were drilled from childhood on ethical use of it. And this ran counter to everything she knew. It feels wrong. Her conscience gnawed at her. Her body trembled while she listened to him and the sound of flesh slapping flesh. Part of her wondered who he was dreaming about, but the majority of her mind was consumed with a sense that she'd done something profoundly wrong. Will he see it that way? She wondered, while she approached a chest in a corner out of view. She opened it and dug through the contents. Her hands pawed through and quickly realized what it was. Costumes. Pervy ones. My sister's outfit. Mine. Operatic-like masks. Armor. Sexy armor is a thing in this world. She wondered as she pulled up a set of female armor molded to the breasts and with small silver chains that hung down and which would swing back and forth with every step exposing the midriff of the wearer. She dropped it back into place. Just find something, she told herself, and her hands moved faster. Distracted as he was, sooner or later he'd see her. The demoness wings twitched about while she worked, and she tried to control her nervousness and her guilty conscience. It's only a dream. You just gave him a good dream. You gave him a good dream once before. That, however, was different, and she knew it. He'd been in pain, and it was no worse than giving a potion to someone to ease their agony until a healing magic caster could be found. This isn't the same. She reproached herself and felt worse and worse. She began throwing things out of the chest as her non-existent heart pounded in her non-existent breast. He trusted you. No, you're doing this for his sake, so he doesn't break when he finds out the truth. That's just more lies. I'm sorry, she wanted to cry out as her guilt ripped through her. I wasn't thinking, I just acted. She accused herself in her heart's tribunal. Guilty. She pronounced herself as just out of view. He writhed in erotic bliss. We were afraid when we were at our weakest that he'd take advantage of us. Now here I am. She cursed herself, and loathing welled up within for what she'd done. Yes! He cried, and was joined by the ecstatic cries of a woman's voice. Lisa, Raziel realized. She went down to her knees in front of the chest. Her legs felt weak. Knowing who it was, his vigorous copulation having just taken place with, made it all the worse. She hurt him so profoundly, and even if it's not really her, still. She gripped her hands on the rim of the chest and stared down into the now empty container. Nothing held any hint of significance or symbol that she could find, but dream worlds could be expansive. There's no certainty it's close by. If he wakes up, all this is for nothing. If only he were like most other races and his mental state always manifested the same. Humans are so disjointed. She swallowed and cursed herself again. Great, you basically assault him and blame him for your failure to end the assault quickly? Great, Raziel. The stereotypes of succubi in her world were not good ones, and all her life she'd struggled not to fit into them. Amoral tempters and manipulators who would do anything for pleasure. I'm not enjoying this. I just wanted to help. If he keeps digging... Oh, so you want to dress up? She heard his voice behind her and stiffened. It was only when she heard Albert speak that she realized she lost herself in her reverie and hadn't heard more moans. She looked over her shoulder. He stood there wearing a white sheet wrapped similarly to herself. "We can do that. Wait, weren't you in the—" He looked backward into the steaming little pool where feminine moans came from two shadowy winged outlines. Raziel's mind raced. She pasted a smile on her face. "I can't let him realize it's a dream." "You're an emperor. Of course you can have as much as you want, even of the same person," Raziel replied and winked at him. "Oh, of course," he said as if her words made sense. "But why haven't you picked something?" He gestured to the pile. "Ah, there's something special I'm looking for, just for you," she said and licked her lips. He cocked his head. Even in a dream, his curiosity was never far away. "What might that be, Raz number 2? He asked, and she looked down at his feet. "You can tell me. No need to be shy. You can tell me anything," he said, and approached a little closer. His hand went to her horn and traced around to rest on her cheek. "You can tell me anything, after all. I love you." Raziel froze stiff. "You what now?" she asked in a tiny squeak. "I said I love you." He chuckled a little, and Raziel's heart turned to ash. "It's just because it's a dream, dreams, and fantasies. I mean, he was just having a four-way with Lisa and 2 others who I don't recognize, and he's got a version of my sister, and I doing the rulers of the 12 circles only know what to each other in the steam over there." But still, his words made her feel so much worse, and her body began to shiver and shake as if she were afraid. However, it wasn't fear. It was shame that roiled like a turbulent and stormy sea inside her gut. "You don't have to be afraid. I'd never hurt you or your sister. You know that, don't you?" "I'm not like him," Albert said, and bending forward, he placed a kiss on Raziel's forehead. "Even in a dream of lust and desire, he's just damn sweet." Raziel blinked. "I know that. That's why I want this, special thing." "I see. Well, if it's really special, I don't just leave things like that lying around. Can you give me a hint?" "I don't mind being teased," he said, and gave her a teasing, crooked, and seductive smile. Raziel swallowed and said, "It's going to be touched by magic, and it means a lot to you, and it's something you remember." "Oh," he said, and belted out a deep, full laugh while his erection visibly returned, poking against the white sheet. "Of course that. Ignore this. Togas don't hide it well. We can have fun in a minute." He straightened up and held out his hand to her. She took it, keeping her talons from poking too hard at his flesh when she let him pull her to her feet. Raziel let him lead in silence. Over on the couch, an orgy of feminine flesh explored and tasted one another, providing the musical accompaniment of moans and mewling pleasures. The scent of sex hung thick in the air as they approached the spreading steam. "This must be how the spell is counted down. Unless I miss my guess, when the steam consumes everything, he will wake up." "So why this?" Albert asked. "You're beautiful in anything or nothing." She couldn't see his wink through the steam, but she felt sure it was there, and he squeezed her hand. "Because I need it for something. The newest moments always have some symbol. It doesn't matter," she said, and cut herself off, then impulsively pulled him closer to herself. "Just know that we care a lot about you. And even if I do something wrong, something terribly wrong, I was only trying to protect you." "You say that like you've done something already. That's not sexy," he said. The steam was profoundly thick now, and both he and she were reduced to outlines, even being close enough to touch. There was only the drifting white between them, and yet it was impenetrable to sight. "No, it's not," Raziel admitted, though she didn't add what she'd done. Ahead of her, the noise of the dream version of herself and her sister were busy wrapped in their own bliss. "I guess I did sort of leave it lying around after all," he said when they reached the center. Within, the cries of pleasure went higher and higher as the music of orgasmic bliss came from the shadowy figures, accompanied in turn by the sound of splashing water. "I don't," Raziel said, and then felt his arm push her down at the shoulder. "Down here at your feet," he said, and taking her hand, he put it down over the clothing she'd bought from Goth Topic. She felt the leather material on the pads of her fingers and closed her hand around it. She felt it immediately. "This is it? Great, but this has got to be the strangest." The raw absurdity of it all was such that she couldn't resist. "So, how come this?" Raziel asked, while she began to lock away the last few hours of memory. "I just think of it a lot. You two make me laugh. In a good way. We have fun together. Things were really bad before. Really, really bad. I didn't really want to live anymore. I would have stopped already if it wouldn't have made my mom sad. Then you two showed up and I just don't think of the sad stuff as much. Like I'm not in a bad dream anymore. They say it's impossible to lie in a dream. But then for humans, who knows? She asked herself and looked at the writhing shadows. It was easy enough to tell who was between whose thighs, given that the version of Liala was holding the dream Raziel by the horns. If he was being truthful? What if... She began to ask, then stopped the question as his arms went to enfold her. Wait, she said, and for a moment she wondered if he would, if he even could. But he did. I want to watch. Start with them, Raziel said, and pointed toward the source of the steam. I owe Liala for this one, she reflected and tried to control the whirlwind of emotions. Her protest of wanting to watch disguised the opposite feeling. I can barely look at him. I shouldn't have cast this spell. I should have thought of something else. I should have done something. Anything. The body of the demoness trembled in the white mist. She felt the fabric of his toga cover her feet when he catted off and headed toward the shallow waters. If it pleases you, I'm pleased. He chuckled at his own words, and he quickly became an outline himself. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'll seal away the last few hours, then wake you up, and I don't even know how can I confess without undoing it. She envied the tears that humans and angels could shed. It seemed cathartic when she looked at them, like sorrow turned to liquid and removed. While she could cry in her voice, she had no tears of her own to shed, and as she watched the shadows intertwine only a stone's toss away, she cursed herself again. You'll figure something out. You have to. His bad dream is worse than he knew. And if he finds out what you did to keep him sleeping through it, what then? She finished sealing away the last few hours and watched as the mental symbol faded to nothing. With that, she canceled her spell, again finding herself looking down at the sleeping, smiling form of the young man. Liala walked Lisa's possessed body back to the girl's home. It feels different, possessing a female human body. Liala had the idle thought pass through her head as she reached the residence. I suppose there's no need for a window, Liala told herself when she reached the alley entrance. It was thoroughly dark out, though the hour wasn't especially late, and a light shone down from just above the door, creating a wide rectangle of light below that made the stairs entirely visible. She reached into Lisa's little brown purse and pulled out a house key. Wait, the angel told herself and reached down to turn the little brass knob. It opened without resistance. They left the door unlocked for their daughter. Liala realized and bumped Lisa's family up a small notch in her heart's ledger. She stowed the little key back in the purse, opened the door, and stepped inside. The light of the downstairs was on, and the path up was glowing with a dim yellow of soft glow lights. Is that you, Lisa? Or are you a burglar? A shout came from somewhere else in the lower level. So much for stealth? Liala muttered under her breath. Yeah, Mom, it's like, me, I'm home. She did her best to imitate the way schoolgirls seemed to speak on the shows she watched, and in her very brief exposure to the real thing. Is it like you, or is it you? A more masculine voice called out. Dear puns, the feminine voice replied again from out of sight. They're a father's duty and privilege, he said, then called out, Come have a cup of coffee with us before we go to bed. Liala glanced through Lisa's eyes up the stairs. It would be safer to say no, and she knew it. It would be easier to say, I'm tired, I'll see you in the morning, and she knew it. But for reasons the angel could not explain, even though her angelic heart knew that this was wrong to have taken over the girl's body, making it her own just to remove Lisa from Albert's residence a little easier and not have to argue or explain herself, and knowing it was wrong to pretend to be the couple's daughter, she glanced in the direction of the voices obscured by another room and then answered with Lisa's lips, Yeah, okay. She followed the noise of cabinets, cups, the crisp crack of a refrigerator, and the muffled voices, not trying to be understood until she found herself in front of a cream-white pair of swinging double doors. Liala pushed at the one on the right and found herself in a cozy kitchen. It was well lit with a dark dishwasher and a matching refrigerator and stove. The black appliances were framed around counters just a little over waist high and full of various other appliances. Some were readily familiar: a toaster, a coffee maker into which dark liquid was already dropping, and the smell of the rich concoction slowly filled the room around it. Others were not familiar. One looked like a pot, but with a top full of buttons. Another, made of plastic, had a tube sticking out of it and sat next to an apple-shaped bowl full of fruits. Off to one side sat a small brown-framed table with a green tile surface which hadn't had the grout scrubbed clean in some time. Lisa's mother sat down at the table with a cup already poured. "Help yourself, dear," she said just as Lisa's father finished pouring his own and went to seat himself opposite his wife. The two were quite the odd-looking couple. If he had green skin and tusks, he'd look like an orc, Leala thought, and she doubted anyone would argue. He was a large man with broad shoulders and thick arms. He had a big bushy brown beard and bright blue eyes. Her mother was his opposite, with inky red hair and soft brown eyes. Whereas he was swarthy, she was pale, and how her hands delicately held her cup, his engulfed it, and was seemingly chosen precisely because it had no handle. Leala went to the cabinet and found a cluster of coffee cups. She grabbed the nearest one and poured. For several seconds, the only noise was liquid sloshing into the cup. "Creamer is on the table," her father said, and held up a large yellow and orange jug. "Thanks, Dad," Leala answered for Lisa and sat at a chair that put her at an angle from both the girls' parents. "I know you went to see Albert today," the patriarch of the family said as soon as Leala took the first step. Leala coughed as she sputtered at his sudden statement. "Dear, we said we'd wait till morning," Lisa's mother replied and turned to the sputtering Lisa puppet. "I'm sorry, but we were worried, so your father checked your cell phone location. You can't be involved with that boy or that family anymore." Lisa's father's voice was gruff, but not angry, merely firm. "It's our job to protect you. I know you don't see it now, but things are different than they used to be." But he didn't do anything." Leala couldn't resist the protest, nor her curiosity at the older couple. "He doesn't have to be guilty to suffer. I may not have control over my father or be able to stop him from employing that boy," Lisa's father stated, but Leala interjected. "He has a name. You know that. You watched him grow up," Leala argued, and after a brief furrowing of his brown eyebrows, he nodded. "Employing Albert, but it's better if we keep ourselves distant from his problems," her father said and took a sip. "Dear, we have to look out for you. We know what happens with him. We just don't want it to happen to you, too. Your friends don't come by anymore. You're lying to us now about where you're going. This can't end well." Lisa's mother put her hand out to touch Lisa's wrist and gave it a tiny, motherly squeeze. "How involved were you two in what happened?" Leala demanded quietly. Both parents' eyes went wide. "How?" "I heard a phone call you didn't mean for me to hear. How involved?" "Just what did you do?" Leala felt a twinge of guilt. "This will probably change their relationship." She understood, but on this, the angel was not willing to relent. "Don't lie to me. I'll know if you do," Leala said with a sudden icy calm. As if the temperature in the room dropped several degrees and they needed the warmth, or just to buy time to think of an answer, both mother and father at the table chose to drink deeply out of their respective cups. "You don't need to worry about that," Lisa's father finally said. "I do anyway. I deserve to know the truth. Are my parents murderers too, like everybody said about Albert's father?" "Did you help kill all those people for a quick buck?" Leala demanded. Her angelic voice resonated in the pair, loosening their resolve and will to lie, and their sense of guilt grew and grew past the barriers they built up, and Lisa's mother finally broke, weeping into her hands. "None of it was supposed to happen. None of it." "We didn't know," she whimpered, while the face of Lisa's father grew dark. "I used to work with him, back when they still hired scientists. I knew something was wrong, and I said nothing. I was scared, and when things started to come out, he took the fall for the whole team." Her mother trailed off, and she could not meet her daughter's eyes, while Lisa's father groused, "I never killed anyone. I'm an accountant. Back when I worked there, I just helped set up funding and do budgets. When things happened, I helped set up the fund for Dr. Lamarck. When he got arrested, that's how I learned the truth, because I had to handle the defense fund. I didn't know he was my friend. I was angry. I was angry, sure. But I didn't know they were paying for him to take his life. I thought I was setting up a dummy system to pay for his legal defense. Lisa's father's hand shook a little, though it was noticeable only because the coffee moved back and forth within the cup until he let go of it. So you paid for Albert's father to commit suicide? Leala gasped and covered the mouth of her puppet. Not me! The company did. Or someone in the company, anyway. I just worked out where we could move the money around without being noticed or drawing any attention. Hiring fake contractors that only existed on paper was surprisingly easy. I didn't really know it was for him to die until I saw the amount decrease a little after Dr. Lamarck killed himself. We really had no idea it would come to this, Lisa's mother insisted. Albert was always a sweet boy. We don't like what's happened to him. It isn't fair, but as long as everybody is looking at him. Nobody is looking at you or anyone else or themselves, is that right? Leala asked. The manifest power of her soothing voice wove its way into their hearts. Yes. Neither mother nor father could deny it and answered at once. At least he'll be taken care of. Before I had to leave, they had me shuffle enough money into the fund to help his mother move, to leave the country and start over somewhere else where nobody knew them. But I guess she just got work in another city. Maybe she just didn't want Albert to leave his home. I don't know. But after that, they made me sign a non-disclosure agreement, paid me enough that it doesn't even matter if your grandfather's store is profitable anymore, and that was that. He let out a heavy sigh and stared down into his cup. Doctor, Lamarck was a good man once. I have no idea why he did what he did or how many people were really involved alongside him, but he took that secret to the grave, and anybody else who knows isn't about to say a damn thing. I really didn't know they were setting up a fund for his family in exchange for his suicide. But that's why you can't be involved with Albert anymore either. He's tainted by that whole thing. His is the only name. What will you do as the girlfriend or wife of a mass murderer's son? Anyone who looks him up will immediately know who he is. Albert is the walking dead. He's got no future anymore, Lisa's mother cried out. It's not fair. We all know that, but that doesn't change anything. You can't be involved with him. Even if he can find work, he'll never be all right. His mother basically left him when she skipped town to work elsewhere. His head has got to be a mess, and now he's getting violent, Lisa's father added. Leala took all that in. Oh, he's getting violent? What about the people who are already violent and targeting him? She said with outrage. She used the skill of her voice through the puppet she now possessed and drew out every buried emotion. Guilt washed over their faces. Neither could meet her eyes. But the excuses quickly followed. Schoolyard antics, he quipped and gave a dismissive wave of his hand. That's the least of what he'd have to get over. No, I'm sorry, but I forbid you to see him again. I'm sorry about what happened, but we can't have you lying to us to go play nursemaid to a broken boy with no future, and ruin yours in the process. He put a hand out and put it on the wrist of his possessed daughter. I'm sorry. I really am. He slowly blinked. I do feel bad for Albert, but the moment he was left behind, his life was over. His mother wouldn't dare show herself again. That much is obvious. You don't have to throw your life away over a friend, and we're not going to let you. I understand, Leala said, and removed both their hands by putting both of hers on the cup and bringing it to her lips. She drank the coffee down to the bottom, set the cup down, then got to her feet. I'm going to bed. I'll see you in the morning, Mom, Dad. Good night. I love you, Leala said, without any feeling to it, not even enough to pretend to fake it. As she mounted the stairs and left the couple behind, her mind was a whirlwind. That explains what Raziel found, why Albert hasn't run out of money. But why did his mother kill herself? Was Lisa's father wrong about the fund? Did they buy her life too? Or the prospect of murder wasn't uncommon. Raziel at least had taken lives before, and there were murders in their homeland. But this possibility hadn't occurred to either of them before. She went up the stairs with slow, heavy steps and entered the room of the young woman, laid her down on the bed, and slowly exited the flesh until she was straddling the now sleeping Lisa. She kissed the girl's forehead. You're not as unfortunate as Albert, but you're not that different. If you retain memories like he does, I owe you a favor for taking your body like this. And I'm very sorry your parents were involved. Good night, Lisa. She whispered to the sleeping girl, and slowly flapping her wings so that she didn't make a sound on the stairs, she left the way she'd come, closing the door noiselessly behind before she shot up to the sky to the obscurity of the clouds and made for Albert's home again.